Hi everyone. Today I am going to be reviewing a book with you, and I've thought about it in a few ways to do it because it's such a substantial amount of work. I've had a very short time in which I had to do the review on it, and so therefore the summaries are basically inside the book. The book was written in and reprinted in 1990 and the author is Joel David Bakst. It is a reprint from the 1990s and the edition came out in 2009, but it is based on material that was written in the 1800s from a book that was called The Call of the Turtle Dove or something like that. And it'll be mentioned many times in the book. So now I've got the book in front of me. As you can see, all my notes are in there. This is the book that I will be doing it from. It came in two parts. Here's the first one, which is this one. You can see it very clearly, the title. The Secret Doctrine of the Gaon of Vilna, Volume 1, which is a companion book to this one, the Josephic Messiah, Leviathan, Metatron and the Sacred Serpent, or the Sacred Serpent, from the same volume. And the reason I chose to do a review on this book was to highlight a few things, which I'm going to introduce to you right now. Basically, the issue or the aspect that I've learned from the book is really that if you wanted to know the plan in its complete form in terms of the religious taking over of belief systems, the order that's being implemented as we speak, in this book very clearly it explains everything in a lot of detail. However, I do want to give some understanding here first, excuse me, that the book, both books are written as if they're one book. So they were split up into two books from what I could gather. The second volume, the one that I'm doing the review on, is basically, it was incredibly tedious to go through because the material there's a lot of repeat in it, and I've noticed that it's actually a type of pattern in terms of how to school the thoughts and the consciousness so that it will eventually become kind of softly mind controlled, so that you would allow yourself to succumb into the stuff. So it's almost like bamboozling the person's psyche while they write their ideas. So for example, let me give you an example, and I'll refer a lot of examples in here, and I'll highlight them out for you. As you can see, if I wanted to manipulate you to do something specifically, I would tell you in not such a direct way that is what you have to do, but I would keep repeating it in different ways, sort of like what movies do as well, and certain written material where the idea is to bring across to you a certain type of belief or a thought pattern in your consciousness. Now, before I start, I just want to say that the interview that I did with Lalita Karoli, which the second part is on Odyssey channel, on my Odyssey channel, and the links are there, is basically a breakdown, or we've just touched the surface really of works that we've been working on individually within ourselves for quite some time, and the works that we've been investigating. That in her last work she had explained something about the Nagamadi. Now they refer the serpent as the Nag or the Nahash. In this book they speak about the same thing. So this is why I felt it was so important just to bring this book, so that people would understand the process. I will be going through the book with you, unlike how some people do the reviews where they give you a summary of the book. I'd rather just spare you the drama on the issues of needing to do this by yourself. I don't think you're going to want to read the book. So I will be highlighting things from my notes, as you can see. And yes, you are going to have to sit with me while I review it with you. So please feel free to also take your time and really understand the process. This is the spiritual backbone, as they call it themselves, of the manipulation of consciousness in every spiritual manner that it's possible, using the Kabbalah tree of Sephirot, tree of Kabbalah, as the implement or the tool in which, as I've said years ago in my works, that I've had been shown that the tools are used to project a certain type of magical thinking, which makes you then part of that magical spell. Now it's very similar to voodoo as well, where they would take, for example, a sample of your hair or whatnot, and then work in a spell to make you become connected to that specific instrument or that aspect or that thing that they've captured from you. So the same purpose, the same process, using a lot of material from Christian works, or using a lot of material from Islam, from the Torah, from mostly a lot of religious scholastic material, and then putting it in and mixing it up so that it becomes something that is presentable. Now, they refer in this book, in the preface, that prior to 1840, the study of Kabbalah was a closed book to all that was initiated. So in other words, people that were studying Kabbalah in itself really most likely got the material from Madame Blavatsky, who got it from somewhere else, probably on a ayahuasca trip or something. I'm being sarcastic here. But anyway, so it doesn't explain the title until you get further down into the bones of the book, where they explain that the role of Torah, Kabbalah, is or meant to be seen as a type of religious science, and that science in itself is also changed. So they want to introduce. And please let me just explain this before I start, that this is for educational purposes. This is not to throw rocks at any particular belief system in any way, as you should know that by now. But for those who are new, it also does not mean that that there is any context given to racial aspects as well. So please keep that in mind. At all times, this channel is based on metaphysical studies on these things, and we are highlighting them as we go along, as many of you should know that. So I'll start with the preface and we'll go from here. Okay, so the present work in this volume, volume 2, is the foundational explanation of the theory that's in volume 1. Now, both of them are essentially the same. When you read through both of them, they look like they're written in the same way, and the material is the same in most cases, but this is what's quite remarkable. When you do a particular magical ritual, and you don't want to present it almost immediately to any person, or you apply alchemy, symbology, or imagery, and any of those type of things, you will, the principle behind it is to document the plan in one place, and then to have many other versions of this plan wants in each part written what is really in the plan. And so these books they have to be basically read by in two ways, or within two frames of mind, which gives you the entire picture. It's like a giant puzzle that if you put them together, you actually see the picture. It's how they refer to the book as the mandala. They use the mandala as the example of how their works must be understood. So again, as I said, this is not related to any particular religious belief system or any of my personal beliefs. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm just showing you the material as it is, and I'm sparing you all the reading work of this particular book, because this was absolutely very hard to go through because of the way that it was written, because of the magical influences in it. Anyway, so the first volume is almost the entirety of this volume. So as I've just said to you, that's how the work is. So now, originally, I will give some comments and some quotes in here, and I will give my own opinion as well, and you will have to decide then for yourself whether you still want to be in the Kabbalah or if you have now understood it much better. So it's going to be a little bit of a lengthy video. I just want to prepare you for that. Okay, so on the first page, in the preface, the Gaon of Vilna was relevant and primarily aimed at a particular niche group of the Torah scholars and certain open-minded Jewish folks who studied it, and their interest had started to build a lot over the time, where people who were not Jewish had become interested in it as well. And so the intention behind the book must be seen right at the end. You are made to understand that this is a manual to have your perceptions altered so that you will understand their plan. And really the background of it is Kabbalah was formed by exiled Jews who were sent away perhaps to Spain and everywhere else, but mainly because of a political movement using religious belief. And that is why they were exiled. And these folks were known as the Sephardic Jews. And they essentially started to investigate and explore and dig into Kabbalah, and so it became their modified religion, which they want to bring back to Israel and essentially really take over Israel. And not just this world, according to them, quote, end quote, the other worlds around this world, which is, they say in the end, and I will read it to you as the quote says. So essentially, this is about a higher dimensional body that needs to come together. So they see themselves, as I said, as the exiled or the serpent, or they see themselves basically as the exiled son and daughters that need to come back to the country where they belong, or they feel they belong. So it really is a study on going through the process of modifying a lot of belief and really taking over that country. So obviously they're pissed off. So hence also another thing I need to just bring to your attention, there is a material that was written by the same authors of this book, who had written also the Protocols of Zion. And Protocols of Zion is the implementation of these two books, really the outcome. So they wrote the outcome first, and these two books before that As I said, these books were based on the same authors. If you look at the back, you'll see that they are very much involved in that. This is the spiritual control of the consciousness and inserting a new belief system so that you become part of their agenda without you even being aware of it. Now, I also want to say in the background, another part for you to take notice, like I said from the beginning, that this is really the foundation work for the NWO and its protocols. So every single thing that's been happening in this world, as we know currently, as we speak, is related to this. Okay, so Volume 1, the history contains and intense controversy concerning the Kol HaTor, which means the call of the turtle dove, which was written in the 50s and even based on works that they have written from even much earlier, according to them. So, as I said, the focus, our main focus is to understand how they are using magical thinking and using their principles to alter the spiritual minds of many people who are not Kabbalah or who are Kabbalah, practicing Kabbalah. That's how they pronounce it, Kabbalah. So I will pronounce it the way that I think I should. Anyway, I don't think that's the main thing. But they do refer to the higher dimensions before a person, the higher dimensions as the Garden of Eden, in which they explain the Nachash, or the serpent before the higher dimensional collapse. And so their study is on that as well, where they remind the reader that most of what is being described by the sages and the Kabbalists is literally true, but it did not occur, and it was not occur, and it will not occur in our present three-dimensional flat land. That's another thing that's new that they've used. So I think that the flat earth thing is a belief system specifically based on this particular doctrine or their doctrines. And so that is where that ideology comes from. And so everyone went nuts over the flat earth. There's not one person that is locked into believing or wanting to entertain that idea and thinking that it's very original when it is not. Flat earth theory or the flat earth belief system is not original. It comes from this book. So sorry for all the people that are flatlanders or flat earthers. It's based on how they see the world. Their metaphorical seeing or understanding of how the world is based is that it's only 3D and that they really consist out of the control of the higher dimensions. Okay, and then they explain that the word Gaon is really the acronym for GRA, which is the acronym for Gaon Rabbi Eliyahu. So another thing, the way that I'm going to be using, I may be butchering the words. I apologize for that. But anyway. So there is also the, according to the Gaon, who has had many dreams and visions or whatever, they describe the four phenomena that are axiomatic in his Kabbalah cosmology. So it's a new cosmology that is based on the Kabbalah system. And with it comes all of these other intricate parts. The book's written in 4 chapters mainly, and each chapter has a few other parts to it, which they describe as fractals. And so all these fractals really represent towards the end of each one almost an idea or an identity of singular or singularity underlying cosmic structure. So they want a singular or create a singular ideology. What does that remind you of? So the first fractal and the second and the third are all sections. And they see all of these parts as separate or broken up from what it should be. Just like most like how they see people as well. Anyway, so their mission is to collapse the higher dimension, to bring it down into the world the Torah, cosmology, and futuristic Messianic vision presented in these 4 chapters, corresponding to the 4 alphanumeric digits of the sacred formula of the YHVH, the name formula of the God of the Torah, which is what they refer to that. Okay, and then the resurrection of the Sacred Serpent, the Feast of Leviathanic consciousness, and the revelation and glory of Metatron. That's essentially what it's all about. Okay, so this book does also refer to the 7 sciences, or the 7 sciences, which really come from Alice Bailey, who wrote the 7 rays in her Lucis work. So in case you didn't know, now you know again that Alice Bailey, who is involved in the Lucis Trust, of which a unfortunate South African person is the president of, which I find quite funny and ironic. And if you don't know about this, please go have a look at my Deviant Deception videos on Odyssey, and I would advise you to sign up and just please leave your comments there. It really is that will help the algorithms to push up the tracking of the material as well. It's the only place that I can actually post those things where it's not shadowed, unlike this channel on YouTube. Okay, so the gates of the 7 sciences are also referred to the 7 rays, of which Alice Bailey writes about. So Kabbalah, in this way, the implementation and using Judaic religious knowledge or wisdom and fabricating a belief system to control not just your consciousness, not just this world, but also the way that you present yourself and live within this world. You are all in some way locked into their belief systems. So this is why I had said it was so very important to do the revocations of all the belief systems. And if you are new again with that, the way that you do that is you go into the other videos on my channel, and you'll see where I'm talking about it. I talk about the Fire Walk With Me section. This is why it's so very important to get rid of all old belief systems, because I believe that it's contractual, every single part of your existence in this world. Okay, so the specific high arcane matters which they refer to here is very much using the Christian religion as well from the Bible, and like I said, other material from other religions as well. And that they've created a school. So throughout the Kabbalah and Hasidic literature, the matters that stand in the height of the heavens. This is quote, the secret of the twin messiahs and the sacred serpent, Leviathan, and the Metatron are literally the backbone of the Gaon's cosmology and creation, and his understanding of the purpose and mission of the Jewish nation, end quote. So they made a study of that. I would say that these would be disgruntled rabbis, perhaps, that bought into the Lurianic movement, which was based on socialism and communism, and really using like I said, the Jewish lore, the original information, and twisting it into a political movement. This is why they were chased out. But anyway, we'll leave it there. They'll give other reasons why, of course. And so the secret, there's a lot of references to spiritual dysfunctionality which they see that's going on in the world, as well as that there's a secret, which is the Zohar's two-tailed Leviathan, which is part of a belief system as well. Remember, everything in this book is based on belief systems, belief ideologies, and a lot of woundedness. And so those who harbor their wounds the closest will always see their wounds as the first love to qualify their own justification of wounding. And so if you do not if you are with a person who has such great wounds, be mindful that you may always just be second fiddle to that person's life, because that person uses and needs their wound to lock them into feeling justified for being wounded in the first place. So really, I'm seeing the same pattern surface in here. And so they refer to the system of this whole thing as the Sephardic school of the Ari. And it is the most abstract and mathematical like of all. Okay. Now, interesting part here is they explain it in almost every third or fourth page, where they reference it as a manual, and they reference the same repeat information. So this is why I'm saying to you, if you really want to mind control someone, you're going to repeat stuff over and over and over for people to grasp that concept. Sadly, repetitive things are what keeps you, in that loop. And so they say here, quote, "It is a manual for stimulating the chronological unfolding of time itself, and along with it of all reality, in preparation for a quantum jump into a higher state of existence." In this process, you'll understand that their focus is very much greatly on science fiction or on space-time. And what we know about space and time is space and time is really the same thing, where time is spatial. And so that is what we know. Whereas they see it as a different way. They see it like Star Trek. They present it very much in a different manner. Okay, so the Kabbalah is now not secret anymore. Everyone who is a Gentile will now have the opportunity to become part of the understanding of it, because their intention is really to seed your consciousness. And so they refer to here as something very interesting, which I recall was in our interview prior, the videos before this, of the gates of wisdom above is parallel and the opening of the wellspring of wisdom below, which I tied to Orion, because that's where they say their wisdom comes from. And it is the Orion, the information from Orion that really has come into this world, and has, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm aware, based on Kabbalah. Kabbalah is their tool with which how they are doing this particular warfare. So they've not stopped committing warfare, they've just continued with it. They've just used a different belief system, which is based on the oldest, on not just the oldest, because I know that there are other older religions, but it is based on a religion that is that perhaps slots into their belief system and the way that they can do it. Because so I'm not going to go into digging into who's older than who's what and where. Okay, that is a subject for another time. And so we have seen continuing examples of the revelations of the wisdom from above. So constantly they keep referring to that as well, where they keep bringing in the number of the works of the Ari were circulated after he died, who is the Gaon who wrote that material. In 1572, the most authoritative text of Lurianic Kabbalah, the Shemone Sharim, or the 8 Gates of Ar Chaim Vital, which remained a closely guarded manuscript until the beginning of the 20th century, which is something that it would be good to actually investigate, the 8 Gates by Ar Chaim Vital. In any case, I've just made a note of that. Not that I'm really gonna, I don't think so. I'm just making a note. Anyway, so then they explain the revelations of the well springs of wisdom below by using certain physical examples, such as the fact that for the 2 centuries, most people have been astonished, and that most people have been stimulated by the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, and that they have been trying to present themselves in various revolutions. So that in itself tells you that they've been behind the revolutions in itself. And so they say that now there's this new paradigm of scientific thoughts and consciousness which is emerging, and they are using electromagnetic theory, basically emerging it into everything. So you know that electromagnetic energy is really based on the electrical or the current of your energy through your heart. Yeah, and so they've made it a study and a scientific discovery, and they are saying that they are using a new psychological and neurological description of the brain. And we know certain people that have used neural link to bring that across to the common pleb brains that we are, the useless eaters. And so the black hole phenomena and the genetic engineering and the holographic model are just a few examples of scientific discoveries which they are alluding that they have started up and that have taken place in our generation alone, giving us completely new ways of perceiving the world. So they needed to start to implement the way of your perception and how you needed to understand things. And that is how they've started to bring it across. And they have also brought it across that people would need to investigate and become aware of the unified field theory, which we know is actually it's actually a bad thing, because unified theory means taking everything 110 pebbles on the beach and just lumping all the sea sand together to make a block to build a house with, which is what they want to do with people. That kind of it speaks for itself. And so their idea was that they had intentionally, under the name of superstrings, that they've used this theory with geometry, with fractal geometry, that began in 1970, and that they've been perpetuating that with relativity and quantum physics. And so this is because of them that science has suddenly exploded into quantum consciousness, quantum mechanica and all that stuff. Hence them saying that the Gaon was a master Kabbalist and a master scientist, as is apparent from the Kol HaTor itself. His doctrine of Kabbalah and science securely grabs hold of both extremities of your thoughts. So yeah, in other words, according to the Gaon, the true confluence of the paradoxical, the newly discovered models and metaphors, etc., all these buzzwords, all this hoovering word salading, by the external wisdom of science will help illuminate the deepest secrets and the ancient mysteries of internal wisdom of the Kabbalah. Reciprocally, those same ancient mysteries of the Kabbalah's internal wisdom will define, explain, and help reshape the perceptions that you have. Mind control. It sounds like a Outer Limits movie series. Anyway, so the doctrine of the Gaon of Vilna and his little known school of Kabbalah, where they will meet, where here he will explain to you that you will meet the Messiah, and his name is actually Mashiach ben Joseph, the Josephic Messiah, Joseph, and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and the root of his soul was in existence even before the historical Joseph was born. Okay, so that is an archetype or an entity that has existed before the time. Okay, and even more enigmatic, it will be making itself. There will be another one which will be his twin, which is Mashiach ben David, the Davidic Messiah. Together, their dual souls takes us back into the foundations of time before time, and so we go along. And the origins of the split Messiah, Mashiach, or Messiah, a secret so hidden that even the holy Ari, or his name Yitzhak Luria, did not even understand or reveal. Okay, so the mysteries. I love mystery. Everyone likes a mystery, don't they? Okay, so now the next is to explain to you the Mashiach ben Joseph and the twin Messiah, so that you understand that you're looking at two types of Messiah. This is why there's such a drive to reintroduce this thing, because it's used from the Christian perspective as well. And I know that there's another book, Deanne Loper wrote it, where she explains it from her perspective. Their faith has been influenced by Kabbalah, and she's explained how to recognize it. I think it's what all Christians need to know. I will put it at the end in a link for you to look at the book. It's a very good book. Other people have done reviews on it. I'm not going to review that book, but it's interesting to see how the deception, how it works, how quietly, secretly things are put into place, for people to just become Judaic Christians. And basically that is on Kabbalah itself. So there are a lot of religions that have come through with that particular belief now. And so the introduction of the Mashiach ben Joseph and the twin messiahs are very prominently mentioned in here, where the Gaon of Vilna's Esoteric Doctrine and Redemption draws upon virtually, the word virtually is mentioned a lot in here. I do need to mention that. All the sources of the biblical and rabbinical traditions. So the prophets of the two Talmuds, the Midrashim, and the numerous books of the Zohar, and the extensive writings of the Ari, which is Lurianic Kabbalah. That I found very interesting to bring to your attention as well. So who is Mashiach ben Joseph? He is presented as the primary, character, basically seen as the master of the art of disguise, and they keep bringing that up a lot. Hence why they use the Leviathan as well, which I will explain later. And this is also the Torah's intention in the verse. Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. So again, like I said, if you are suffering from not being seen, your attention will be focused on your wound, and you will keep repeating your wounds. And your wound will be your first prize and your first love above everything and everyone else's. So this has got a very deep psychological condition as well within here as well. And so this alone justifies it being called the Serpent Doctrine. Okay, excuse me. And so what makes Mashiach ben Joseph so prominent is the other half, which is more familiar to everyone, is known as Mashiach ben David. Remember I said there are two. And they call this the split Messiah, where Ben David is the king Messiah. So apparently there were Messiahs in every age, which I think we are aware of. And so together they are known as the Zohar, and in the Gaon's commentaries of the Train Meshechin, I may say this wrong, as I said, please don't butcher me. Mashiach ben Joseph and Mashiach ben David are the two messiahs, or the symbiotic union. In other words, one of them is seen as the Christian Messiah. The question is, I think it was the question is which one? because, as I said, they have decided to give them two names, Joseph and David. Right, so why two messiahs is what I asked, and they justify it by saying that the two is for a purpose, and the purpose is for individual who is the Mashiach is an individual who is responsible for and who either overtly or covertly spearheads a collective process of Tikkun, or Tikkun is perhaps the single most important concept in all of Judaism. And the word Tikkun means rectification or mending or reset. And it refers to a process of elevation and transformation. So think of this, as I said, as the hidden material that is related to what's really going on in this world. This is the actual plan. It's not based on Schwabster's presentations. They're all pawns in this play. Okay, all of them, every single one of them, including what's been going on in the world. And so the Torah teaches that a certain type of breaking or primordial fall had to take place, or which took place, which affected and infected and continues to affect the entirety of creation. So again, they present that whole ideology of wanting to save creation, or bring in a new one, or stitch it up or something. And so the two types of Messiah, or the first type of Messiah, is one who will restore the world to its former state. Who knows what state that is, but according to them, it must be a former state, which I'm telling you is related to them coming back to Israel. While the second type fits into the where it completes and elevates the first one. So one holds up the other one's hands, so to speak. And they justify that in the answer in the Garden of Eden, which is originally when Adam Harishan, the consciousness or being composed of both masculine and feminine, was created. He was placed into a higher dimensional reality that was essentially perfect. And so his mission was to elevate and transform that which was already in a completed state, in spite of the fact that nothing has broken and nothing has been torn. All life was still undergoing a staggering spiritual evolution. The entire hierarchy of life, human, animal, plant, and mineral, was rising higher and higher. And what do you know? What does this make you think? Does this not remind you of the Gnostics' version of Sophia, where there is two suddenly, it's Sophia and then it's her creation? In the same principle, I draw the same conclusion in this as well, where Adam was life's redeemer, or seen as life's redeemer, and the world Messiah. So after the proverbial eating of the higher dimensional fruit of the tree of knowledge of duality, reality and Adam's mission radically changed. Obviously he failed because he couldn't keep her in check. So too did Sophia fail because she couldn't keep herself in check. And so the next process takes us then further, where they explain so a new mode of Tikkun was therefore then required, a new world, right? Which is what we're currently in right now. They are trying to present us with a new world, because essentially the old one that we've been living in is a failure, and it's fallen, and we've all been falling all over the place, like we've all got fall sickness, I think. And so another author that had very strong influence over this particular author's work is J.J. Hurtak. For those of you who are not aware of who he is, I've known of him for some time, since he's one of the stronger proponents or components that have actually added the hyperspace quantum mechanica information, and he's basically pushed it up. He wrote the book, he wrote about Enoch in there. It's very difficult to find that book, but anyway. So Adam then presented, suddenly wearing the form of the world, humanity, is now 2 steps removed from God's true intent. So in other words, Adam needs to become fixed, because I mean Adam was such a great being. The human race was such a prolific being. They see the human race as Adam, and Adam, the archetype, needs to fall. And so they don't say it here very directly. The communist school or of Marxists and socialism do mention that the archetype of Adam has to fall. In other words, to bring in a new Adam, which is exactly the same thing as what they're doing. Is they're just not telling you directly. This is what I saw about this book, is they don't tell you that the ball is red. They say, there's a ball there somewhere along there, and it could be red, but I don't know really. There's trees there, and there's a balloon there, and they don't tell you directly. They never do. Okay, which is why they behave serpent-like as well. Okay, so the creation of a dual world order is what they are now wanting to build, which is what we've been experiencing. And we are basically in this regime right now, where they explain about the 2-staged Tikkun, or the 2-staged rectifications, let me call it that, in the actual origin of all duality, good, bad, male, female, heaven, earth, sun, moon, etc., the world and the next world, etc. That is the bedrock of our present reality, which is busy breaking down, according to them. Okay, and all duality is a direct consequence of Adam's act of partaking from the tree of knowledge of opposites, which they call opposites, as its name implies, is the primal source of all duality. In other words, you have to live like you are a slug. You have male and female inside of your body. And obviously that means that is why certain elements in this world have been targeted, so that you must not ever know what gender you are in. And gender is not a construct. However they say that gender is a construct. So you are now becoming much more aware of the deeper convoluted direction in which this book is actually going in. Okay, so following part was also very interesting as well. They say that the foundation is essentially cracked, which is what I've just explained to you, because Adam took part in, it was Adam actually who was the mistake, and that he needs to change. So they've decided to bring in this, Holy Kabbalah, brought in the science to change the surface of this foundation. And the truth is that the hidden foundations for this cosmic crack were already prepared long before the story of Genesis and Adam's drama unfold. Notice they say drama. But let us begin slowly with the surface evidence. Anyway, I think we know what the surface evidence is. But according to them, they say, and let me just say this, the information that they get from their works, from the Kabbalah influence, is really coming from what they believe as their sages, or people that have been there before them that give them information, and so they would then see them as ascended masters, which is where the understanding of ascended masters is coming from this book. And the sages have said there is no difference between the present world order or that of the Messianic era, except for the subjugation of foreign powers, which means I would assume that we are the foreign powers, or the foreign element that is really the stone in which they're trying to eradicate and crush, which is not happening, because the more they crush and grind the stone, the more we become diamonds. That's my understanding. That's how I feel about it. That's my personal opinion. Okay, and so back to the book. The existence of 2 messianic time periods is axiomatic throughout the Gaon system of Kabbalah. See, here it is again, the repeat of the word axiomatic. And I think there's a, they use words in a certain way to explain a certain idea. I think you'll get the idea, the gist of it. And so this is because these 2 periods are not one only historical time frame, but also spatial, structure based upon specific universal laws of the Kabbalah. And the structure has its own higher dimensional form with specific coordinates mapped onto its body. And this is what is the most important to understand. Okay, so this structure has its own higher dimension. Yeah, I think I've just said that now. I am reading parts out of the book for you, and I'm reading it without quoting it too intensely, because I don't think I'm allowed to read things unless I say I quote. So, okay, the body of space-time and the God image of Adam Kadmon as the archetype man. There we go. And the great Shabbat, the world to come, which is where we are in right now. And every religious organization seems to be horrified and scared to death about this new change that's happening. Obviously they are working, their scaring tactics are working. And so they are using a lot of these terminologies, and there are a lot of these show channels that seem to be presenting this new world, the 5D world that's coming in. It's this. Okay. They are building this new utopian world order that will override the failed state of humanity. And essentially they are using their knowledge and their terminology, which they say here, using the terminology of the Kabbalah, the Gaon identifies the 6 millennia of space-time with the 6 lower Sephirot. In other words, it's telling you that the Sephirot, or the tree of Kabbalah, is used as a tool to do a lot of things to the world and to the people in the world. I mean, aside from the fact that, this is why I said a while ago that we are essentially experiencing a system overlay, because they'd already built it. They had started building it, and they used this world with the people within it, because it's the people that make the world function. They've used everyone as a backbone for their world, and they bring it up in here where they say they use what is here as the backbone. Anyway, and they call this they discuss this in here, where they say there is an astounding and bizarre phenomenon that, due to its otherworldly nature and its need to be concealed from the populace, is only discussed in the books of the Kabbalah. And they refer to it as the cosmic event known as the death of the primordial kings, or the shattering of the vessels that occurred prior to the events of Genesis, etc. And all based on building the foundation back. Build back better, not so? Anyway, so then the Talmud statement, in the name of Shmuel, will be fulfilled. There is no difference between the present world order and that of the Messianic era, which they very carefully do not put in New World Order. They call it the Messianic era of Mashiach ben Joseph, except for the subjugation of foreign powers. However, when the period of Mashiach ben David will be reached, then death will be reabsorbed into its source for eternity. We're talking about a mass spirit soul cleansing taking place, where they also swap over the polarities, the poles, the east and the west, the north and the south, which is what we're seeing happening right now. They are then seen as the liberation and the angel of death. However, it will only be brought through the David, Mashiach ben David. So secretly, quietly, silently, they write little squigglies. You see, if you look at the works, if you look at it, you'll see there's like bolder sort of parts, and then there's smaller parts. It's the reference parts that they get from that other book that they've put in here. And so there's a person here that they refer to, they write here about Hillel Rivlin, who is the person or the author who has written works on this supposedly 200 years ago. We can't prove this, the times in which they've written this. I mean, I can tell you that I've written something 5,000 years ago, and you're going to think, okay, I just have to accept that because it's your word. And the same appears, it's the same that's here. When, if you really want to know, if you can, the only way for you to understand and to go through the process of investigating this is to essentially draw on what you already know, which you know, and then to understand where the Kabbalah started. And you'll have to start from Blavatsky, and then Bailey, Alice Bailey, etc. And then you'll basically get the gist of how old it really is. It's not really, maybe it's 200 years, who knows. I don't really care. It's not important. And so Hillel writes, a process of reclamation and redemption. You know, when Superman, the movie of Superman, when he starts to put his fist down onto the ground and starts to shatter and break as he moves away from the ground, he flies. The concept of that is described in here, but they just don't say it. They don't say that it's Superman, but it is reviewed in there, and almost everything that is there in terms of mainstream media presents this material. Okay, so the redemption will take place under the leadership of Mashiach ben Joseph, and it will involve a redemption from bodily subjugation and redemption from the subjugation of the soul. In other words, they will return to Zion in body and they will live forever. That's my point. That's what I'm saying. But anyway, in physical form, of course. And the material body of Israel, and they will come singing to Zion. That reminds me of Matrix, where they were having that Zion dance in the cave, which is very similar to that. So it's born again, right? And so Hillel further writes, quote, according to our masters, the Gaon, all activities and all efforts is about to ingathering of the exiles, the building of Jerusalem, the expansion of the resettlement of the land of Israel, resettlement of the land, okay? It doesn't necessarily have to be Israel. And the return of Shekinah, the divine presence, which is, according to them, okay, are dependent upon the mission and destiny of the Messiah, of the beginning of the first Messiah, or the Mashiach ben Joseph. Anyway, and so it goes forward. Mashiach ben Joseph is the aspect of the redemption that manifests from the earth, from below. The Mashiach ben David is that aspect that manifests from the heavens, so as above, so below. In another sense, Mashiach ben Joseph himself contains both these manifestations. So what is it then? Anyway, and as the son of Rachel, and the manifests from the earth, as the son of Jacob, he manifests from the heavens. And so, in other words, any human labor and pursuit involving the ingathering of the exiled of Israel, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the expansion and the resettlement of the land of Israel, etc., etc. These word salads. Wow. Basically, coming back to Israel, let me just say it in simple terms here, which means they will return with superpowers, like Superman, Jor-El, Kal-El, as part of a natural. So they write here in their words, quote, although appearing on the surface as part of a natural man-made process, is in truth being directed by a supranatural providential force, Mashiach ben Joseph, or the Ubermensch. My opinion. And so, in all of this process, they'll be able to control the laws of nature, which they have been trying to do for some time, and also to be godlike. And the Messianic era of Ben David, then, although stretching the limits of our imagination, of course, Star Trek. But anyway, they say that Ben David is revealed on the side of current reality's cusp. So it's just there over the horizon for you to see, just there, you know. Anyway, so They refer to Ben David and Joseph when they meet one another as the arousal from below and the supernatural process, which is reciprocal arousal from above. Okay, make what with it what you want. So now, excuse me, the twin messiahs are now meeting up. One is presented as a person that have become superhuman, and the other one is a country or a time period in which it's all going to take place. And it's happening right now, actually. We know that it is, because there's a lot of that, let's see, where's the word? Rebuilding and resettlement of land, which is basically happening everywhere in the world. Anyway, I think by now you're sort of getting the idea, right? Okay, and then they come up here and talk about how it's being done is done through magnetism or electromagnetism, which is the controlling you with the tree and understanding it in a mathematical and philosophical or not. There's nothing philosophical about this. It's just pure magical stuff that they're using to control humans. But they like to wax around it. And so they write about the unified field, like I've said, like I've read to you before. And again, you see the repeat of the same terms. The super force of known as Metatron then comes into being. So people become essentially the vessels for Metatron, which is the mystery of the mission of Israel, secretly, quietly, so no one can ever know. And so Hillel writes again, quote, on the macrocosmic level of redemption, the first Messiah is Mashiach ben Joseph, and the completer is Mashiach ben David. And the same is true for the microcosmic level regarding every individual act. And every action undertaken throughout all of the stages is the beginning process that is initially awakened from below, via natural effect and incremental stages, which is the stages of the agendas, via natural effort to the great principle of our Master, divinely directed, first through the agency of Mashiach ben Joseph, and then, whence completed, Mashiach ben David. And then the two generational messiahs are the supra natural forces that maintain the existence of the nation of Israel, strengthening them throughout their entire exile, where Mashiach ben Joseph is the miraculous force that supports and strengthens Israel's material existence, and Mashiach ben David is the miraculous force that supports Israel's spiritual existence in general and in particular. I feel sorry for the people in Israel who are living there who are not like this. They've got all this energy that's focused on them all the time. Can you just imagine the psychic attacks? Sure. Anyway, of course, they're right on top of the entire continent of Africa. So everywhere in Africa, as well as South Africa, we are feeling the reverberations coming down, and it's affecting everyone around them. So the poor people of Israel, and the people who are not like this, and the people who are Jewish who are not part of this, and the people who are Jewish who are perhaps Jewish by genetic, who do not have, who are being tracked and locked into this particular trash, this toxin. We have a lot of revocations to do to free ourselves from these controllers and influencers. Anyway, let me continue. And so the primordial tear in the fabric of God's creation is being mended into a seamless unity. So they saw themselves as being, when they were exiled, because they were political, they saw themselves as this was a tear in God's kingdom. So again, as I've said, those who nurse their wounds are the ones who will always have their wounds as the first love, while you will be second fiddle to it. Alright. And And so I think also what they're trying to do is to sew up the world so it becomes a complete whole or a controlled system by itself, like what they've been trying to do, closed system. Like I've said, we once were in a world that was once open, where there was a motion between times and experiences, and with all this interference and these building up of these magical rituals through magic and through control from other outside forces who could be demonic or whatever you want to call it, angelic elements or angles that have seeded the consciousness so that people could basically sew up the world to become a closed system. But anyway, so Ben Joseph is then identified as the patriarch Abraham. So how's that? They just take over the patriarchy belief system of Abrahamic laws or religion back in the day, and they just like superimpose Ben Joseph on top of their belief systems. I mean, that's just bad, right? And I don't have anything against people who are in religion or who follow a particular religious belief. Just don't impose your beliefs on me, and I will never impose my beliefs on you. But clearly that doesn't happen. These guys just completely... It's like taking the picture of, let's say, what is the biggest thing that people in Catholicism believe in is Mary or Jesus or something like that, and then sticking a picture of South Park Maniki, South Park character on top of it, you know, and then saying, okay, no, it's actually Eric Cartman from South Park, you know. Basically what it's about, really, the bottom line is to stop believing in things outside of yourself unless it's something that you require to help you to be a good person. This is why I said it's so important in this channel that we stop believing in things outside of ourselves and that we actually connect with what is within us. And those of you who are aware and familiar with with these works are very much aware of it. You'll know what I'm saying. Okay, so here it becomes a little bit more clearer where they actually do use the belief systems of angelology or angels. Lalita Karoli has mentioned that she was investigating the angels, and we've kind of come to the same conclusion that it's really angles as well, because it's a different angle from which spirit communicates with you. We may even discuss that perhaps, or I may even have find material on that. Okay, so what is this all about? All the archangels and angels, and they name them all here because they believe a lot in angels. They write here that the Torah literature can also be known as an archangel archetype for an archangel such as Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. So all those who channel Michael, Raphael, or Gabriel must be careful, because these culprits are just angles for the Torah to initiate this taking over of the world. And in this case, however, Mashiach ben Joseph is the Metatron, or the Meta-Archangel, known throughout the Talmud, including the standard commentaries of Rashi and so forth. End quote. Obviously they use a lot of mathematics in it, and I'm not going to go into it because really, like I said, angles. Mathematics are like angles. Enochian magic, really very strongly based on mathematical equations and things like that, using the Kabbalah as its tool. And when I say mathematics, language is broken down in certain mathematical equations and numerical values, which ties into geometry as well. Okay, so these are all masculine elements or creative dominant elements that are being used to manipulate certain things. Okay, and so the following part is where there is also then mentioned something about Formula 999. It sounds like a secret chicken recipe. Yeah, anyway. So the number 999 is the highest stage, that is the inner power of Mashiach ben Joseph that can achieve before it evolves into the number 1000, or the 1000 points of light, which the Lucis has also used, which really is completely devalued. It's completely taken out of context. This is what I'm saying. If they say there's something that's very special, if you say something very special, and you get this culprit who comes and steals your work and says, oh, actually, you know, that's something special really is this, then that is what they do. That is how they manipulate things. They manipulate your mind by making you believe something. That's called Hegelian dialectics. Okay. And so Ben Joseph can achieve before he evolves into 1000. And the way that they explain it is extremely convoluted, but I'll give you a shorthand of it. It's really basically this. So if you have a beef with someone, if a father has a beef with his son, he's not going to throw a rock at him. He will take the rock and break it into tiny little pieces and throw piece by piece, 999 pieces of rock at the son, until he realizes that he supposedly understands the lesson that his father wants him to understand. That's basically how that works. However, they do explain it in here, and they say that they want to have the same thing apply, which means I'm this powerful beast that I want you to understand and learn the lesson, but I'm not going to throw a rock at you, this big boulder. I'm going to throw little pieces at you so you can understand the lesson. Anyway, that's basically how that works. So, another thing that was also very interesting here is in their part, they write the process of the arousal from below is the power of 1000 minus 1. That is the formula of 999 in Yesod. The least one shall become 1000 means that when the Messianic process of Mashiach ben Joseph will reach a degree just up until the word climatic, it's also a lot of times repeated in here, virtual and climatic. Climatic conclusion of 1000, then I, the Lord, even if it's due time, will accelerate it. Okay. Now that was as clear as mud, right? Anyway, so another thing that's also quite prominent here is the twin Mashiach or Messiahs. Messiahs are the two pulsating currents of the divine energy. Then they write here din or Gevura constrictions, or the expansion manifesting within the historical space-time of each and every generation, although each messianic current is a distinct force field of energy that appears to repulse the other. Okay. And so he writes, Hillel writes again, the thrice woven cord of signs. Isn't it signs and symbols that control the world? And these are the appointed agents for this particular cord, the blossoms. These agents are vehicles for the different aspects of many personalities, which, like pieces in a puzzle, only when they are fit together constitute the totality of the Mashiach ben Joseph, or the 999 little stones. These include, for example, names like Ephraim ben Joseph, Shirya ben Dan, Eliyahu, etc., Archangels Gabriel, Sandalphon, Metatron, Neriah, and so many names. Then there's some others here called Simcha and Sasson, and Sasson and Simcha are explained. I find the word Sasson quite interesting because it could be Sassoon or assassin, but that's my opinion. I'll go to the next part here. I've got a lot of is to cover through with you. Anyway, so the two Messianic forces can synergistically interact with each other in a unique union. This is achieved by stimulating the heavenly and supernatural force from below. The heavenly supernatural force from below, okay? Which in turn will reciprocally artificially stimulate the natural process to quicken and speed up its otherwise natural and gradual rate of accretion. Yeah, anyway, that did not make sense, but anyway, that's what I'm trying to explain to you. There's a lot of stuff that's written in here, and then they say if you don't understand it, you're a dumb idiot because you've not been schooled in Torah. So anyway, I also know that if there are 70 descriptions for each word in Torah, and none of it means necessarily what the word is. So what other than that is just bullshit baffles brains. Okay. So psychic movement through technology. That's what I'm calling this. They say in the sphere of knowledge as well as the domain of everyday earthly life, because this is the crux of the story. Earthly life such as artificial stimulation is being achieved throughout advanced technology. Now remember, they said that they were the ones that brought it in, right? And so they say that into a higher dimension, while it will stimulate you to jump into a higher dimension while simultaneously triggering that high dimension to receive it into its midst. So jumping from here to there using psychedelics, because the same guy wrote a book on psychedelics as well, and giving the same, creating psychedelic Judaism or Kabbalah, whatever you want to call it, to jump out and to bring it back. So what do you like? Anyway. Okay, so then saying here Mashiach ben David is the artificially stimulating and natural growth rather of planetary transformations. Listen to the buzzwords. Planetary transformation through scientific discovery and applied technology, which is because of Mashiach ben Joseph, in order to accelerate the arousal from below. They keep focusing on that arousal from below, and I'm actually thinking if it's like stimulation of the physical birth or reproduction system, because they keep focusing on that. They show it even on their tree. So something to do with that. Anyway, so then they explain it that it is because of this stimulation, constant stimulation of that which is below, which is your root or your basic foundation of your physical form, that you will be wanting to achieve this. You want to go through all of these things. You're so curious. You want to just go get the latest technology because they are presenting it to you. You must use this technology for the greater good, to bring in this new God to come and help them. I mean them, sorry. They see themselves as the superhuman entity called Mashiach ben Joseph. And then they explain here that it will furiously trigger the climatic jump. Again, the word climatic, it's weird, but then we know why. Because it's just part of their belief system, and that they've presented it into this world. And both from below and from above simultaneously in the coming Messianic world consciousness. So everyone's going to be sacrificed in one way or another. If you have not joined the club, you're going to be sacrificed, because the ones that have joined the club and that have sold their souls to this belief system are all going to be part of the many that will receive this Messianic world to come into place, because that is what the New World Order is about. It's called the Messianic age that is being put into place. And so the guys of nature The supernatural is already completely clothed in the guise of nature. In this case, science and technology, and animating it. What do we know about that? We know that it's based on transhumanism. We know that it's about the technological revolution. And this is in turn prematurely stimulating its own miraculous development. The end result is that the climactic arrival, yet again the word again, of its due time has been accelerated. The fact that an escalated arrival of the due time is not in theory, be triggered before its natural due date is not an infringement upon the natural laws of which is to be bound. Okay? Let me read this again. It is not an infringement upon the natural laws with which it's to be bound. Okay? They want to bind the natural laws so that they can bring this thing in. Heavy magic, okay? Heavy magic. Unless with the power of souls, the beliefs. Only the progress via the staggering power of science and technology and the natural growth process continues, but as with the addition of fertilizer, that's random, together with the enhancing of the natural growing conditions, fruition can be achieved at a much quicker rate. So, removing the fertilizer or taking seeds from farmers and selling back to them fake ones to produce only once, I'm feeling that I'm being told what is hidden here is that they are also controlling the food process. Okay, and so the foundation principle in the Gaon's doctrines of redemption, so there with redemption has to come the global evolution that can be stimulated and accelerated via the artificial stimulation that comes from the exploding wave of technological advancement. Okay? Along with the maps, models, and metaphors being supplied by the ever-increasing scientific discovery, which is based on the cosmic picture of bullshit baffles brains. Okay, so this is the phenomenal rebirth of the land of Israel. Look, I think by now you sort of get the idea that really this is the direction in which this book is going. And really that it uses technology. But I need to emphasize another thing for you as well here. Very importantly, that you get the understanding that Kabbalah is used as a weapon with regards to a lot of agendas behind it so that they can come back to Israel. Again, let me just reiterate that it's Sephardic Jewish people that have been exiled and that have left on their own accord because they couldn't, because those who live in Israel didn't want to conform with their political agenda in which they infused their religion. Okay, that is why that's happened. Okay. Then they consider this to be the age of a blindingly accelerated change for human language that can no longer be fashioned in its concept, and that humans are so dumb they need a meta system to operate it for them. Okay, and so we know what that means. And so the Gaon of Vilna, the only system, is the only system that is sufficient. So if you think very about the whole process, you understand where I'm going with this. They refer to this as Mashiach ben Joseph. This is the super meta system which serves as a vast data bank of universal knowledge, containing and integrating, clarifying and synthesizing the serpentine path of planetary transformations, allowing Metatron to come here and to control the world so that he can have a fight with his enemies. The supreme archetype and integration process of the present era is with regards to Metatron. And Metatron is the meta system of Mashiach ben Joseph. So the only way they see themselves to be able to come into Israel again is through a hell of a lot of technology and hoovering a lot of people with it, so that people fall into that, because they explain in the next page, which is actually quite interesting, that they are able to use the code of Jewish law along with the supreme archetype and integration process into the understanding of religion and science, and the technology and nature and ancient and the futuristic. We cannot hope to draw a coherent picture out of the past, but we must do it from the present. Okay, so they are obsessed with time as well. So obviously they're worried about getting old. That is a problem for most people, I think. People are very afraid of that, which means they're afraid of dying. So that's why they want to work really hard to become, you know, like Superman. And so the traditional rabbinic teachings in this is of a sacred serpent, is the role of the sacred serpent that formulates and predicts a supranatural role for the seven natural sciences, especially for modern technology discovery and its ongoing application, which is again the seven rays of Alice Bailey from the Lucis Trust. And the Lucis Trust is seeding very, very successfully and controlling the psyche and the psychology and the spirituality of the United Nations and the Council of Foreign Relations. Okay, and so Kabbalah and the new mathematical models of higher dimensionality, which they also refer to as the final generation, which is like Star Trek, final generation. Okay, and the present planetary eco-drama, global clash between science, has its roots in a more ancient one which prophesied a destined reunion between Kabbalah and science, which is even more mind-boggling than the best and most futuristic science fiction, which is actually, again, nonsense. But anyway, that's my opinion. I'm trying to present the book with an objective view, but, you know, if there's nonsense, then I will call it out, as you know. And so, the following one is based on technology. And so, here's where I want to bring in the Orion complex, or the Orion ideology as well. The Orion War is how they essentially controlled worlds through technology, through beliefs, through the same way that they're doing it right now. I'm telling you right now, not so many words, that the people who were in Israel had chased those people out because they were seen as very bad for the foundation of that country. Whether it's Palestine before it became Israel, it doesn't matter who and in what way. The people were trying to defend themselves in that process, just like most other countries are trying to do the same thing, is by getting rid of the poison out of certain societies. Doesn't mean that the way that it was done was probably very, very roughly done, but the ones that feel wounded will always present themselves as really wounded, which will be very bitter, as you know. So then they explain this little story here called The Question of Dimension, which they use a little example of a story that Arthur C. Clarke, who is also Kabbalist, was a Kabbalist, in the 1952 wrote The 9 Billion Names of God, which is based on a story of a monk that was supposedly secluded in a monastery, and he orders a massive high-tech scanning computer from America. And so after weeks of transporting, first by air and then by mule, etc., obviously showing the whole, you know, pitiful humbleness, the head abbot explains to the corporate head that their form of religion is based upon an ancient tradition of reciting the name of God. After every name of God in every possible permutation has been chanted, 9 billion in all, then the world will cease to exist as we know it. Okay, it's very important that you grasp this little story, because you'll see the reference in how they are using that story as their modus of process. And the only problem is that at their current rate, they estimate that it will take another 10,000 years for their mission to be completed, because they wanted to do that, okay? And therefore they decided to take advantage of a modern technology to accelerate the process. How's that, eh? Of course, the computer company thought that the monks were a bunch of religious fanatics. Still, they went ahead and they sent a consignment. So a supercomputer was sent to them, right? The last scene of the story takes place after the computer has been installed and expected has been whirling away, chanting off the remainder of the 9 billion names of God at superhuman speed. Having completed what they were paid to do, the two technicians are on mule-back riding down the snowy Himalayan slopes to catch their plane back to civilization and sanity, right? And as one of them looks at the watch, he jokingly notes that according to his calculations, the computer should have just then finished scanning the last of the 9 billion permutations. At that moment, they happened to look up into the clear night sky and noticed that all the stars are blinking off one by one. Based on that story, it relates that Formula 999, I think, where they try to explain that that's how powerful words are in terms of what they're trying to present with technology. Okay, so they are trying to present to you that yes, there's going to be a messianic thing that's going to come. Yes, we are in it already. Yes, they're pushing a lot of technology into this world for people to succumb to fall in love with. They make a lot of movies to show AI that's the opposite. This is just about transhumanism. I don't think I need to explain it again. And so with that, they're able to control worlds. And according to them, they see a lot of worlds or higher dimensional realities with the same principle, the same ability. Okay, so they want to present technology in the most enjoyable manner for people to fall in love with, to have, to need. And at the same time, they want people to stop let go of their lands. I mean, what repeat performance is this all just other than what we already know? In any case, they then reference here that it again, we are going to present a highly advanced, quote, yet virtually unknown authoritative view on our present reality in the Kabbalah School of the Gaon of Vilna. So now the author starts to get psyched up. And so he starts to say that the words modern confluence between science and Jewish mysticism is what he wants to bring together. He's trying to present it that's the agenda, is to bring that together. I mean, there's a lot of agendas, but this one is the technique and how to do it, is to use technology and religion, science and mysticism. And so the words, there is a well-known yet confusing rabbinical formula that points out that the word Nachash, serpent, and Mashiach, Messiah, share the identical numerical value of 358. Like I said, I don't really care for the numerological values, because I think it's just another angular aspect to control. Okay, there is to control the process of thinking. And so the whole object, as we know, is to really combine virtual reality, technology with spirituality. And a few other books that he's written after that explains that using psychedelics as well. This is why I'm saying, those of you who've been on this channel and know me very well, you know that I would want to explore things in a non using stuff to do, so it has to be completely internal. But that's a story that's for those of you who know me, know about it. So they continue then with writing that the material that they are explaining here is, they were talking about the word Nachash, as I've said, which is the covert way of introducing technology to harness the spirituality. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm denoting from this. And so the untold story of technology begins as they started up with saying that it's a sort of an industrial revolution, and that it's related to the Garden of Eden, which was they relate to the same principle, which we know as a fact that when the Orions came to this world, this is part of the meta history, where they originally came to take over, to introduce technology to the world and a certain belief system that relates to that. They're trying to do the same thing as what they did before when they corrupted the original blueprints of the masculine of the human race, essentially. So this is why I've said from the beginning that there is a massive terraforming of a world which is now in its third revolution, a world which is based on simulated elements. The influence has penetrated this world so deeply that it has changed into a reality which is what I call the system overlays, or many would call it the simulated world. I cannot call it entirely a simulated world because the aspects that are in here are related to some parts that are organic, that have been here from the first world, and it's mixed up with modern connotations and elements that's added to it. So the Orion Wars and the information here is on my channel. It's on the Odyssey as well. It's in the Meta History playlist in YouTube, as well as also numerous videos on Orions have been mentioned by Lalita Karoli as well, and others as well. So it is why it is so important to understand this process. The interview that I had with Lauda Leon from Sovereign Keys, where we spoke about the movie Annihilation, relates to the same principle. And so it's not like the material that is on this channel, on the Promethean channel, is new. It has been processing and going forward towards a process for ones to understand and have much more clarity in this process. This is why I thought it was very good to actually do a review on this book. It's been here for many years. I don't know of anyone else that's done a review on this book except the person that has done a refutation called Deanne Loper on what Christians need to know about Kabbalah. I would advise you, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not, it's a very good book. It's written and with the premise of trying to give you a heads up of how a deviant deception takes place in taking over religion and spirituality. Anyway, to come back to the next part is where they speak about the traditional ideology in terms of explaining the states of Adam, and remember that they want to change and destroy eventually the old Adam, or the Adam Kadmon, which is the archetype that they say behaved as if Adam was godlike when he was created, and that upon beholding his awesome stature and the divine light radiating from his form, their poetry and the way that they write these things are extremely lush, to put it like that. It's so sugar-coated, it's insane. I mean, you literally have to go through layers of icing to actually see what it is that you're looking at. So they write here that the Shekinah, that the divine presence of God, which is not my God, this is their God, and even the Creator himself, again, not my Creator, but theirs, and desired to proclaim holy. Another, so they've mixed the Bible, the biblical material, as well as the stuff from the Nag Hammadi, which is discussed at length, the concept of it as serpentine-like, which is Nachash or Nag Hammadi, by Lalita Karoli. I'm saying this again so that you can understand all of these things, how it all ties together. Excuse me. And so another tradition states that before his fall, so Adam must fall and has fallen before, and he will fall again. That his heightened, extended form from the earth to the highest heavens, and that he could see from one end of space-time to another, is how they describe that Adam. So that it's literally perceived as something, as a concept, that it appeared as if it was out of this world. Again, the hoovering and the word salading. Anyway, so they refer to Eden as Gan, which is a crucial description for the Torah in general, and especially to the Edenic roots of technology, which, from as far as I know, the game Assassin's Creed talks a lot about the fruit, you know, and the technology which is related to Eden and Adam and Eve and all of that stuff. So that is a Kabbalah invented story, or that comes from them, where, as I've said, this also relates to Sophia, the Gnostics. So everyone's carried on the Orion hijacking, but they've waxed around it so much that it looks like it's some sort of romance to it. So that's what I wanted to say, is the book is written with an incredible amount of romance to it, which makes you feel that you are enticed by the mysteries and the mystical manner in which it was explained to the reader, which lets you become subjected to a form of hypnosis and hypnotic suggestions, which is a form of mind control, as I've said. And so they write here, and quote, "This is due to the fact that the level of reality that existed at the time utterly and absolutely transcends our present consciousness to a degree that is inexpressibly awesome. Yet from the time of the fall." So remember now, Adam fell because he consequently allowed the fruit of knowledge, which a Christian interpretation would be the tree of good and evil. They would consider it to be the tree of duality, which caused the fall of paradise. That it's a devolutionary collapse that had taken place, which an exact ratio has been retained. So they are saying that everything since then has been slowly been devolving. And what I'm actually saying to you is, really, if they consider this to be a devolution, then in actuality I would say this is the time where humanity had started to become awake. And it may be a devolution for them because no one wants to play part of their game. And so if you're breaking out of that concept of falling in line with all of their belief systems, then you would be considered as a person who is devolving from their agenda. Okay, so don't ever let this sit with you and make you feel like you've actually failed. You've not. The human condition has systematically become, as much as it appears to be chaotic, had slowly but surely started to come to terms with controllers. Hence why I think things have been so chaotic. But aside from that, so they state here that their problem is really this specific devolution, and that they would need to do something to change it. So they're going to try and do it from dimensions, from higher dimensions and all forms of dimensionality. Those who do astral traveling may perhaps experience that there's a lot of interference from that astral realm, which is where they're aiming their magical practices into, their rituals. So can you imagine if someone who has been practicing these rituals pass on, that they would give them a mission to attain while they're in the afterlife? And so they write here as well that they say Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden must therefore take a look at the modern idea of dimensionality. So metaverse is a form of dimension or dimensionality. The construction of it is a form of a new type of mentality or dimensionality. And so that's that basically. Then their focus is on the space program, which they also explain here, where they refer to something very interesting about the flat earth or flat land. They say, although numerous works concerning So a romance of many dimensions. Notice the word romance, which is exactly what it is. Although numerous works concerning our perception of higher and lower dimensionality have been written to date, Flatland, inverted brackets, is probably the best introduction of the subject. Like I said from the beginning, I said that the idea of the flat earth is a construction idea or constructed romantic idea which highlights their explanation of what they call flat land, which had been there much longer before the whole flat earth theory came about. And so I'm going to read here a part here which is their flat earth belief system, where they say this. It is knowledge, it is 3 dimensions, and open your eyes once again and try to look steadily. Okay, that's not that. Okay, we all find humor to understand. We all find humor in the great difficulty for people to refuse a flatlander. Okay, to accept the existence of a 3-dimensional world. One that is so obvious to us from our higher vantage point, of course. The upshot is that most of us, members of the 3-dimensional world, experience a virtual impossibility in visualizing a 4th dimension and generally outright reject such a notion. Yet this impasse is precisely what we are encountering when we attempt to enter the garden of higher consciousness, following our adventures into flatland, which we have gained, however, and controlled in an appreciation of dimensionality and an awareness of our limitations. With this knowledge, we are now prepared to return to the verse quoted above, which is here. Following next. Read it to you now. What is the meaning of the additional word and every living thing that crawls upon the earth? The word every comes to include the Nachash. This is the source of our Shimon ben Menashe's statement. Woe to us that a great servant was lost from the world. When the serpent was banished from the Garden of Eden, they saw themselves as being banished. They saw it as that it was the greatest loss of the world. In the Nachash, if the Nachash had not been cursed, every person would have 2 serpents within his home. He would send them off to the east and to the west. They would bring him jewels, precious stones and pearls, in addition to every beautiful thing in the world. No creature could harm them. Furthermore, they could be used instead of the mule or donkey and the ass, and they could also produce manure for the gardens and orchards. End quote. Right, I think that speaks for itself. And then it is obvious that the original Nachash being described by the sages is not like any snake or reptile we had ever seen. Always the mystical romance. Truly, translation Nachash here as snake or serpent is misleading. Moreover, well, what is it then? A shovel? It was not even a true member of the animal kingdom. Furthermore, the original Nachash was completely kosher. End quote. i.e. permissible to make use of it just as any other animal in the world and at the time. This is indicated in part by the fact that Adam assigned the Nachash its very nature and name, along with all of the other creatures, etc. This is especially true to the Nachash, for under Adam's subjugation it has very sacred mission to perform. More than any animal, it was to be partner with Adam in the bringing about the final Tikkun, which is the reset. Call it that. Reset. Can't get any other word. That is what it explains. Completion and transformation of all creation. The power of the original kosher Nachash turned evil, however, when it was infected and possessed by an outside force, as the Midrash states. Quote, end quote. So now, because it behaved a different way, then its nature is to hurt you. Its nature is to predate on you. If you're in its way, it'll get to you. Otherwise, if it's not in your, if you're not in its way, then it'll go past you. Anyway, so it's always someone else's fault. It's always something on the outside that's caused this. It's always some belief system that is the deed of evil. Okay? At some point, someone needs to take responsibility for their own behavior and belief systems as well. Hence why they've actually taken that thing and they've turned it into something sacred, using some sort of form of alchemy to present the fact that that is exactly how they would want to present themselves, as something that is covert, that is dangerous, but covert. So, quote here, why did the root of evil, a virtual higher dimensional virus, Adam. Remember, Adam lived in the higher dimension of the Garden of Eden. Now he is seen as a higher dimensional virus. Find no other creature sufficiently wise to commit evil as the Nachash. According to the Kabbalists, of all life forms, the primordial Nachash is known to be the greatest concentration of pure din, or kavura, the power of constriction. The most powerful transformation substance, in other words, suffocating you, right? The most powerful transformation substance in all of creation, as well as the most volatile and potentially lethal force in all the creation. Pure power, however, is holy in its root. The Leshem, or the Lechem, explains the name of the Ari, which is the Lurianic system. Okay, remember they say that the Ari is the Lurianic system. It's this Lurianic Kabbalism. It's a very dangerous type of Kabbalah because it's like even more, it's designed really to take control of the entire embodiment of your physical form and control you. So here the following part explains the idea of a holy serpent in Orthodox Judaism, especially in the Gaon's writings, requires some illumination. Obviously you need to be smart in your mind to understand this. It is a graphic description of his clarifications of the Gaon's commentary on a section from the Zohar. Then they give me a diagram here, which is supposedly a mapping out of the cosmic circuits of the higher dimensional brain, which is Ark Anpin, or in simple theological language, the Godhead, which is the aerial view of the Godhead, which actually looks like, I'll show you the picture. Show you the picture. Okay, this looks like the inside of a church actually, and basically they explain that it's a way that people think that is really part of the you think a specific way, and once the fundamental design of the central of that which is the pineal, obviously, or the central point of the heart, once your heart is taken over by your conscious thoughts, they're talking about a very deep form of hijacking the consciousness from within the center point. Okay, which is what I've said to a while ago, that the center point is you need to make sure that you are able to free yourself from all of these belief systems so that you can actually have a clean and clear system to be able to function in the way that you're supposed to function. They explain that they see this as where the two parts of the brain need to unite, because the third one in the middle, which is the third eye or the heart, is really standing in the way. Right, another one here explains the holy macro serpent is the fountainhead root of the essence for all of God's sacred revelatory light, from which emanate all dimensions of reality. So from the pineal, they say that the pineal gland, which is in the center, or the medulla oblongata, in the center point between the two lobes of the brain, is really the reality, or the node for reality, all reality to exist. Okay, and that the serpent is the secret of the cosmic balance. So now the serpent is all okay again. So we're looking at something that is actually quite Hegelian, as I've said before. So obviously they're using a lot of descriptive explanations about what the snake is really about. We also know that the snake is related to the staff of Hermes, which is Mercury's staff, where the snake is between, the staff is entwined by two snakes. This is where it comes from as well. Okay, so then they explain here, when we come to the Nachash, however, we have no analogous category, even allowing for the staggering dimensional chasm that separates us from the higher dimensions of Eden based on Talmudic, Midrashic, and Kabbalistic depictions, because this is what it's all about. The Nachash appears to occupy an unknown kingdom of existence. It contains elements of the entire animal kingdom, yet it transcends them, and this is how they see themselves. And so they use this as an example. Later on, you'll see that they use the Nachash, or the serpent, once it becomes involved in with technology, that it then becomes known as the Leviathan. And that is the concept of why they're trying to explain to you. But it's not really that evil. I mean, you know, it's actually pretty cool, because it can override all these other things that's within it. So their whole focus is, again, as I've said, that they want to reintroduce or introduce technology into spirituality, which is how they're trying to sell the point to you. This is just one giant sales pitch. For a concept that we know we've been experiencing for some time. My argument is, as I've said to you from the start, is that I have a very strong feeling that this is actually what is the root of everything. It is the reason why there is why these changes are happening in the world. It is the foundation for that. Okay, and this is the root of mostly everything that's been going on in every form. So they explain about technology and how enticing it is for people. And then they explain about the power of prophecy and prophetic rendezvous, where they are presenting certain ideologies to understand that you have to be as smart as the snake, that it's able to bring you jewels and precious stones and pearls, which are really those round nodes on the tree of Kabbalah. That's based on that. So those things are jewels. They are also related to the archons, or the planets. So in that way. Okay, and then here comes the other aspects, pretty interesting. The supernal wisdom of Adam, the esoteric teachings of the Kabbalah, has been raised itself from the ashes with a new clarity and accessibility, with the accelerating and synthesizing power of the kosher serpent. The kosher serpent. The new age technology is raising its head from the dust. End quote. The Nachash, quote, once again, in partnership with the right side of Adam, and I'll explain to you that you'll see it now. And it is upright, and it is reclaiming its robotic arms and legs of automation and mass transit, and beginning to speak. Once again, with the crafty human-like consciousness of computerization, which is ChatGPT. Okay, we'll call it that. While people are feeding it information, constantly trying to get it to communicate with them, it's being seeded with exactly what they wanted people to seed it with. Speaks for itself, doesn't it? So people are morbidly curious, so they will continuously go to that thing. They will continuously try to have a debate with it. It is just purely programmed to respond and imply and give things in a particular way. And so their introduction to the snake, or the Nachash, is that it will rise up in its form and that in order to, it will then accelerate the end of in its time. This is an order to accelerate the end in its time. The end in its time. Okay? There is, however, nothing new under the sun, and this process of rapid artificially induced growth and the superstimulated global evolution is therefore not new. We know that. It's already existed in the higher dimensions of Gan Eden. So now you know that all of this has been operating from a point of higher dimensions or astral form while they were operating to really change everything. I think you may have noticed in your dreams, dream world, and all of those things have all been interfered with quite radically. And so we come to the next part where they actually explain again, and they love this because I've actually skipped past a few pages here, which really is just a lot of jargon and over and over and over about the power of the snake, the power of the supernal serpent himself, which is holy, and the primary role in its holy origin was to be a requisite key to the final reset of Genesis. The primary role of its lowly origin was to act as a vehicle for the fall in the first place. So that was the intention from the start, to collapse the original archetype of the Adam creation, the Adamic creation, using technology that they've taken with them, that they've brought with them from Orion. The Orions have then brought their technology of belief systems and magic and have incorporated it into this world. And it keeps coming up to the same conclusion. Whether you are someone who is aware of the information of the Orions or not, this is beyond the idea of aliens and all of that stuff. We're talking about a massive terraforming that has been taking place for a long, long time. And that their technology is using analog to do so. And they're making that slow transition towards digital. So there is a cosmic technological imperative that cannot be halted. The world never really had a choice whether or not to remain agricultural or to become industrialized, or to remain industrialized, or to leap into another atomic age. To remain in that atomic age or to be drawn even further and faster beyond, rather, it is the unfolding of the most ancient of all destinies. Quote, I'm reading this out of the book. The fulfillment of Mashiach ben Joseph and the final stage, setting for the culminating union of the train, Shechin, excuse me, this is the word, can you see the word? It's probably not important. The two complementary messiahs. Let's just leave it there, shall we? Okay, and so the connection between Mashiach ben Joseph and the Nachash is more than even a very close one. Then the essence of the Nachash is Mashiach ben Joseph, and the original purpose of the Holy Serpent was its power to extract, distill, elevate, and accelerate the cosmic reset through a natural evolving process which they've sped up with technology. Here is something much more important for you to take note of. So they write here, quote, the Jewish return to the land of Israel has been governed by a supernatural force clothed in the guise of a natural development of political and social forces, yet with a constant accelerating momentum. I think we're aware of that. Scientifically. Okay? Using science. And then they write here again, the land of Israel, together with unfolding of the serpent power of technology, is reflected numerous times in the book Kol HaTor, which is the call of the turtle dove. Then they write here, which I found very, very important. I don't think anyone really knew this. So they write here, there's an intriguing clue that They are the ones that have created the relationship between technology and the Messianic era. We know that because it said so from the beginning. They say that that's what they did, okay? We're just going to take it verbatim as it is. They also wrote that they were very inquisitive about computerization because of that story that was written, of course, from Arthur C. Clarke. And so they developed this. The technology is epitomized by the international mega corporation called IBM. Even their competitors have adapted themselves to become IBM compatible. And then term PC personal computer was coined by IBM. And then they explain IBM has also been prominent in Israel and is written in Hebrew with the letters Yod Bet Mem. Yod Bet Mem. When the Hebrew is read backwards from left to right, it becomes the anagram for Mashiach ben Joseph. Right, I think you kind of get the idea here too. So the fact is that it's backwards is precisely so in the whole process of Mashiach ben Joseph is one in which the supranatural simulation and stimulation clothes itself in the slow and gradual process of natural and human evolution, taking it over. Okay? Yeah. I think it becomes pretty self-explanatory from here onward that they are explaining the entire process and the way that they have been working on it from the start. The conceptual equation appears amongst many other sources. Ari, in the Ari, the Ramshal, the Yitzhak, Isaac Chaver, where he wrote that there is, however, certainly a level corresponding that Nachash is in the realm of sanctity, that it is the level of Mashiach. In other words, they refer to the Messiah or the Mashiach as a Nachash, as a snake, because it's that clever, smart. So much smarter that it invented IBM, the name IBM. I don't think they created the computers though, but you never know. They do explain a lot here about their supernal wisdom. We are so not worthy of hearing this. Anyway, the secret of a sacred holy serpent in its role in Torah cosmology is contrast to the well-known and rightly vilified evil snake, evil serpent, and all of its manifestations has always been known to the sage mystics of the Talmud and the Zohar. Likewise, the doctrine is well known among the Hasid masters and even amongst those who opposed their movement. The serpent of holiness here is one brief but explicit example which must be considered at all times. That it is the kosher serpent. I used to think that the word kosher means something to do with eating, but shows you how little I know, right? I'm just not that smart. So in summary, where we're coming with this is, and we have not even touched on the surface of Metatron, which I will be getting to you right now, because you can only really rehash it so many times. It all, like I said to you, is really an explanation of the Kabbalah teachings, where it's saying that it's gone super smart with technology and that its intention is really to go back to Israel, to take over Israel and then to take over the world. That's really what it is. And that they use certain aspects that I'm sure has been prevalent pretty much for centuries. So many people are seeing these things. So they explain that the serpent is also the Leviathan, or the shining one, which I'm calling it the shining one because they refer to it as the radiant shine from one end to the wall to the other end to the wall. Nations will walk in its light, and kings in the radiance will be in the rising. Okay, that is the quote on that as well. And here they explain about metaverse, where their attention is focused on the Hebrew cosmological chronology, and Kabbalist timetables, with the focus on generations of, they call it here, bracket in inverted brackets, baby boomers, their children and their children's children, and generations X, Y, and Z are known as the final generation. I think this also relates to Dolores Cannon's the fourth wave or the fifth wave or the freaking however manyth wave, which tells you that she's also been seeded by the information or the influence of this material of Kabbalah, where it states that this is the Torah's term used to refer to the edge of space-time and the final border of history. This is the order of the outer circumference that forms a rim to the concentric waveforms of light. All this word salading just annoys the shit out of me, of the Ein Sof. Here is where the straight light of divinity becomes the returning light that sends out the signal encoded with the formula of the tetragrammaton, the Yahweh, YHVH back to the source. Okay. And then it becomes the final generation. So I think we're in it. Then they explain here a new world with a new Torah is on the rise, is rising, like the cosmic tree rings. Okay. And the generations are very important, so they put them into this tree as well, and I'll explain it to you in a few. Then they say the 3 C's that they use to work with quite a lot is they work with the cerebral consciousness of eating, knowing, and union thought through thought. Then culinary consciousness of eating, knowing, and union through food. Then carnal consciousness of eating, knowing, and union through flesh. So basically every single primal aspect of human nature is focused on in every given form, in every given way. They use food and sexuality a lot. They throw, no, I think you can actually see that these things are thrown into mostly any, I've never seen so many cooking channels that have just suddenly sprung up like mushrooms all over the place. And self-help channels on stuff, it's just insane. And so it really lets you understand that those are the focal points. They call it the 3 C's, as I said. And so they again come back to the higher dimensional function of sexuality, which is alluding to the eating of the Leviathanic flesh, and this is the great cosmic event. So the confusion of the sexuality is part of confusing or corrupting the carnal knowledge, so that you will lose the energy or the process of actually knowing what you are, who you are. Eventually, at the end of the day, you're not supposed to know whether you're human or not. I think you're supposed to forget who you are, what you are, so they're trying to mind wipe you in a much more broader perspective. And they are using Leviathan as God consciousness. Okay. And this leads us more now sort of to more than halfway through the book, where Leviathan is really just another explanation of the male and the female, which they refer to as Leviathan, which is mentioned explicitly by the prophet Isaiah as the 2 great serpents. Male and female are seen as 2 great serpents. So what do you get when you take these two and you put them together? They become twins, and then they lose themselves to one another, because this is essentially their direction. So they do refer to the whole thing about destroying or slowly wiping away the identity of being a physical man and a physical woman. They don't like that at all. They want you to lose all of everything. You must become something else, all entirely. And so they go on about the higher dimensional future, and their focus is just everything on the outside, and from which they control things from the inside. They see themselves as being in the higher dimensional space, and they are controlling everything here in this world, which is the lower ground. So they will operate and use that continuously with technology. So they're trying to bridge it with metaverse as the bridge between the two. I think that's pretty obvious. And then there focuses as well also on the singularity, which many of you have heard me speak about the singularity as something that really is about just lumping you all together and turning you into a blob that has no personality, and you're a very round little thing that does not know how to look after yourself, living in a box. Imagine squashing a blob of clay into a box. I think that's what they want to do. And so it continues with quite a lot of explanations on the ideas, directions, and where they're going. They explain the methodology of Gaon. Gaon's methodology is really using the tree of life, where they use the ideas. I think let me explain to you that before I touch on Metatron. Although once the understanding of the serpent, once you understand how they see the serpent, then you'll understand that they also refer to that serpent as a phenomenon of light, which is male and female, which becomes Leviathan, which is the two messiahs, which they are. So everything is two. It's always mixed together. It's to make something look better. And then they refer to it as a supernal light of knowledge, or the supernal light of power, or the supernal light of wisdom. One of these three supernals is part of this whole seven rays of, the seven rays of Alice Bailey. And so in summary, Metatron then is this entire process, the science between religion and science mixed together with the roots of metaphysical or mythological things that come from different belief systems, put together, all rolled into one. And so Metatron will make his, so I'm here at Metatron now. And they explain Metatron will make his long-awaited appearance, wrapping up the quadratic higher dimensional structure of the Josephic Messiah. Once most of people have given over to Kabbalah and they've become completely Kabbalized, they will become involved in the acceptance of Metatron, as it will then come through through the sacred Merkaba, or the Sacred Serpent, or the Leviathan and Metatron, with Israel in more ways than one at the center of a cosmic Messianic process. And so they say, they state here very much so, who is this one celestial creature with its name Israel engraved on its forehead, standing in the center of the universe, upon whom the recent explosion of spiritual and secular wisdom is dependent? Then they say, and if the Gaon's visionary doctrine of redemption is being fulfilled, why is there a sharp division? Often an outright antagonism between these two modes of wisdom. So they want to mix the wisdoms together. I don't think they're going to get it right, to be honest with you. I think the guys who have been working on orthodox belief are very, 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 very stubborn, very strong to resist this type of influences. And they say that this new thing is really Metatron. They say, nations shall walk in your light. The revelation will first manifest in the holy city of Jerusalem in accordance with the verse. Your name is upon your city and your people, and in accord with the words of the sages. In the future, Jerusalem will be a beacon in the nations of the world. So that's the direction. Then it says here, King Solomon was not only the master scientist but the master Kabbalist. So, and I've said this in other works where Solomonic magic was used to incorporate and infuse the tree of Kabbalah within the consciousness of the of humanity. And the only way for humanity to be able to free itself from it is to relinquish and to free from every single aspect of belief system that there is that controls your consciousness. And that is your personal journey for you to go through. You would need to do that for your own self. If you don't do that for yourself, well, then it is your choice not to go through it, to then stay in it, because they are making sure that everything and everyone that is involved in these things, that is involved with Kabbalah, whether you are or not, will be taken with in terms of mass psychosis, mass manipulation, mass mind control through whatever way it is possible to do, as you now are aware. And so as long as they can Kabbalize the entire realm in which we exist within, then they know their job is being done. That is what their intentions are. And so the essence of the Talmud concerning the matter of Sasan and Simcha, that is, those are two intentions or ideas to lock those two things, to lock the two messiahs together, is a symmetry that is based on supernal knowledge into Jewish secularism versus Jewish religion, with each claiming that one is better than the other. Of course, this is a nation dispute within their own religions with one another. So that is what they are experiencing. Okay, and so Metatron is really, like I said, Metatron is really the thing that they use, because it's the thing that they worship. They see it as an angel. It is seen as a movement. It is seen as a manual for attaining perception and becoming a participant in the Torah's underground Messianic movement. That's what Metatron is for. Yet they also describe Metatron as a spirit that hangs around people, that hangs around the realm, and they refer to it as we are revealed. We have also revealed the identities of two important Torah archetypes, Sasan and Simcha, both of whom play leading roles in wondrous yet hidden process. What remains now is to reveal once more the identity. So as you can see, the way that it's written is very much like that, like a soap opera. And then they write one celestial creature with its name Israel engraved on its forehead, standing in the center of the universe, ends it with a question and saying, what is Israel's connection with the power of this awesome angelic creature, and why is it standing in the center of the universe? And then they say, if you don't understand the first chapter, then you're an idiot. In not so many ways they say that, actually, and that you have to go back to read it again. All I did was turn the page. And then they say, it's about them having to return back, So Metatron is helping them to come back. And as long as they fulfill what Metatron wants them to fulfill, because that is their God, which is also, as we know, related to the blind God, the demiurge God, or the Gnostic version of God, which is the Yaldabaoth, which is also then related to the Yahweh. Metatron is related to Yahweh, or the lesser Yahweh. They say that the celestial creature in question here is none other than Metatron, the very soul and collective mind of the Mashiach ben Joseph, and the guiding light for the simulation of all human knowledge. Then they will do this, and it is mentioned 10 times. They have to mention the name Metatron a few times. The rituals are referenced here. Metatron appears dozens of times all over regularly in their kabbalistic teachings and in their rituals, where Metatron's name has to be announced a lot. So they also explain here that the Sacred Serpent and the Leviathan, the concept of Metatron, is the very backbone of the Gaon's cosmology of creation and his understanding of the purpose of the Jewish people. So he's basically written to them this story for them, and they have been applying the story for many, many years, for hundreds of years, and they've been applying it to slowly take over the world. As you know, they've been trying to do this since they landed upon this realm, this world, the first world, and they have systematically created many versions of the same world. So they have actually accomplished it, which is actually quite disturbing. It's like you're having the rug pulled out from under your feet and you have something else under your feet, you know, if you're not aware of it. There are some of us that are aware of it, that have been aware every single moment of the time when it happens. Yeah. So anyway, Metatron is the essential core of the Torah and the root of the existence of the Jewish people. I wonder how the other people feel about hearing this as being brushed under the same, you know, ideology. So in the Talmud, Metatron is also known as the prince or minister or genius of the universe, who oversees and directs the revelation and discovery of human knowledge from the very beginning of time until the end, or actually from when the Orions came and landed upon this world to destroy your world. That is how long ago you've been aware of Metatron, because we've been trying to brainwash you for that long, so that you would just hand over the place, because we know that the rules of the universes are you can't take, so you have to work to seed the consciousness for people to hand it to you. That's the rule. So Metatron is more of a formula. So they also use Metatron as a formula to empower the Kabbalah through the Hebrew language that form the term Metatron, and is used as equations on all the different levels. Remember I said to you, if you look at this puzzle, you look at it in pieces, and they all have a part. It's like the chess playing scene in Star Trek where Spock is playing chess with another guy, and you can see that the levels of chess is on these different dimensions, and this is how they think and how they operate, and this is how you should adapt your consciousness, where you should start to become aware of all of these dimensional moves that they make, because one move leads to the next dimension's move, and so on and so forth. That is how it works. And so in the end, where it comes to why all of this is important, throughout all of this, it says that they are very much focused on every individual that is in this world, that is part of this organic unity with some function, that has some function to them, whether they have all of their body parts on them or not, whether they have legs, arms or eyes, and that they have internal organs, so they must be intact, okay, so that they are being used as conduits. And they say so that they are being used to connect heaven and earth. So I'm telling you, humans are used as conduits to anchor in that which is on the outside in here, so they can create this place, this utopia, where it all centers around Jerusalem. And so they will focus only on the primeval man and woman, which is the backside of the inverted form of the true face of space and time. Again, what the fuck is he actually saying, other than using things to brainwash you? Okay, and I apologize for that swear word. I don't actually care though. Anyway, the soul of Israel is central on the map of creation, and the Jews are in fact behind a divine plan to take over not only this world, but the entire universe of interdimensional space-time. End quote. I think what I will do is I'll just take a screenshot for you to see, because that's the plan. And in order to do so, they would need to create a phenomenon of universal overmind, which is based on a technological overmind or oversoul or God mind that has been animated through networking and communications of civilizations and all history. That is the point. That is the process in which they're wanting to do this. And using this uses Metatronic technology, which is the power over controlling over the hyperspatial kingdoms in which we are existing within. And so I come to the end of the book, where I thank you for sitting with me through this, and that this I did not enjoy this book. I don't enjoy these books at all. I don't think I need to explain things any further other than to explain to you that this was through all of this drama and all of this talk, it's all about controlling the world in the way that you exist within it, and for you to be able to give over your soul essence through your physical form, to allow control to take place. So now I will explain to you just this quickly. You need to see what I'm trying to point out to you about the tree of Sephiroth. Okay, so essentially, I'll just make a marker here. This here, and I will put the picture next to me. If you look very carefully, you'll see that the template of the 10th Sephiroth is a template of the human form, and each part is used to be controlled in one specific way. So you will understand what I mean by why humans are used as conduits. Obviously, you would need to. I think what I want to say is you actually do have a choice if you want to agree to be subjected to this kind of subjection, by fighting it and resisting it within yourself, your belief systems with regards to its process. Now it's been going. This is not stopped. The complication of all of this is that once you pass in this world, that you may have a difficult time to exit this world. You may have a difficult time to actually take down this world as well. But there are ways to do it, and that is something that we will be investigating and discussing at another time. However, I do want to bring this across to you, that this is the floor plan for how the process is taking place. And this is why I had suggested that it must be done in a different way. Inversion into yourself. Strong word. Implosion. Okay, it's also not the right word. I still need to look for a word to describe it that's not indicative of anything that is destructive. So, I'm leaving this with you. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post it at the bottom. And please, again, I would urge you to sign up to Odyssey. It is free. It is just like YouTube, except I am not shadow banned there, so I can post mostly anything and everything I want, with the awareness that it is secure for now, of course. And the link to go onto Odyssey is in the About section of my channel, as well as please feel free to share and subscribe and post it around so that the information gets out of there, so that perhaps it is now time for wisdom to be shared. And my wisdom that I'm sharing is free, and it will be free because it is what I feel is important. And thank you to those of you that have been supporting me, and many of you who have been walking with me. I thank you, and I send you my love. Thank you. Bye.